Episode 204, Programming Sunday with a Purpose, with Mitchell McGhee. Part 2. Let's do it.
This is the definitive podcast for helping you plan, create, and execute dynamic worship experiences at your church. Useful, practical content in the areas of production, worship, communications, first impressions, and more. This is Making Sunday Happen.
Well, hey guys, this is episode number 204 of Making Sunday Happen. Thanks so much for hanging out. This week we'll be showing you the second half of Mitchell McGhee's workshop on the funnel programming method, all about how to program your Sunday worship experiences with a purpose. Now, if you missed part 1, feel free to jump back to episode number 203 of the podcast and catch up. That's part 1 of Mitchell's talk from SALT 18 last year. And before we dive into the second half of Mitchell's talk, I want to tell you about our sponsor for this week's episode. I want to tell you about SALT 19 in Nashville. So today's workshop from Mitchell, again, is from a SALT conference last year. And we also showed Rob Thomas's workshop a few weeks ago. He's the president and the creative director at Igniter Media. We showed that a couple of weeks ago, and there's more to come randomly over the next couple of months. We'll be showing you several workshops from SALT 18 as a part of the podcast. So we're showing you content that you can only get behind the paywall at SALT University at saltu.tv. You're getting that content right here absolutely free. It's all leading up to this year's SALT conference in Nashville. It's October 9th through 11th at Long Hollow Baptist Church in Nashville. To register you and your team, you can go to saltnashville.com. That's saltnashville.com. My friend Luke McElroy, who leads the SALT team, the two of us have put together a free resource for you and your team. We wrote this book a couple of years ago. We wrote a book called The Production Dictionary. In fact, I wrote a dictionary, the Live Production Dictionary, and then Luke and I teamed up and we kind of morphed and updated and revised it just to add more terms and to kind of spice it up some. But it's called The Production Dictionary. It is a 45-page guide to all the phrases, concepts, and terms that are used in the world of live production. So any term or concept that you might use when producing or executing your worship experience, especially in the production environment, this book has all those terms. You'll learn over 250 concepts, words, and terms that relate to video, audio, lighting, worship, and more. It's a great resource to have in any production booth. I want to tell you how to get that book absolutely free. I want you to go to 1230.media/free dictionary. That's 1230.media/free dictionary. And we'll put a link to the book in the show notes for this episode for you too, so that you can find it there and then click right over to it. Great partnership with Luke and the guys at SALT to present that resource to you. 1230.media/free dictionary. You can pick up that book absolutely free today. All right, we're going to jump right back into Mitchell McGhee's workshop on the funnel programming method. Here is Programming Sunday with a Purpose, Mitchell McGhee from North Point Church. Check this out.
Here's our rules of engagement. Here's how we program on purpose. Again, if you don't choose to use any of this today, you don't have to. But I would say if you can, think about your win as we're talking about this, and think about how you're getting there. There are 3 sections. Jim, can we show that first graphic? Is there a graphic? No, there's not a graphic. Okay, well, a few minutes ago my computer really messed up there. So I'm going to show you this right now. We are going to draw what I would consider a funnel. We're going to make it into 3 different sections. So in the top part of our service, we have what we call engage. In the second portion of our service, we want to involve. And then in the last portion of our service, we want to challenge. So on any given service, on any given weekend service, we are going to do 3 different things. Now, and you'll notice that this is a what? It is a funnel, okay? How do you spell funnel? N-N? There you go, E-L. Okay? Now, back in the day when we were noticing that our Sundays continued to look the same every week, and we didn't know what this was, so we started trying to put a name to it and figure out our process and all that kind of good stuff. And somebody called it the funnel of love. And that happened for about 6 minutes. That just sounds really, really weird. So we call this the rules of engagement. Because at the end of the day, we want to engage the people who we have been stewarded with. So these are our rules of engagement, okay? Not the funnel of love, okay? So in the first one, there are 3 things that we could do on any given Sunday. I really wish we had this up here so you can see it, and I can make this available later for all of us. In Engage, this is pre-service, opener, welcome type stuff. I'm going to get back to this in detail in a few minutes. In Involve, we are going to sing. We're going to have baptism, potentially an offering type moment. And in Challenge, we're going to have either a special, a message, a closer, and all of that kind of good stuff. Right here, okay? So here's what we work off of on any given week. Right here, element 1 for us is an opener. Anybody else start off your service with opening stuff every once in a while? Yeah? What do you do for fun? Anything? Any good ideas? I'm just kidding. You have to give them right now. I lied. This is not the opener. Mitchell, come on, buddy. This is pre-service. What a dum-dum.
Hey, Mitchell, I'll put it up there.
Oh, you have it?
That's helpful.
You did put it? Oh, yeah, thanks, babe. That's my wife back there, y'all. She came down with me. Her name is Jen. She works at our church too. She's in middle school ministry. If you would like to ask her about that. Jen, am I doing okay?
You're doing great.
Oh, thanks, babe. That's real sweet of you. The pre-service experience, like I told you earlier, anything from the parking lot to the time that they sit in our room. Here's what we found out at the beginning of the service. If you offend someone here, right here, it's going to be way harder to get them to come with you here. So most of the stuff up here is very light. It's very airy. A few years ago, our pastor, his name, you may have heard of him, Andy Stanley, he took a few of us, about 2 years ago, he called this like impromptu meeting. We were like, what the heck's happening? He never calls meetings, especially with programmers, people who plan the services. And we're like, we're all getting fired kind of thing, you know? And so he calls us and he says, hey, I want you all to walk with me. He hands everybody a piece of paper and we all walk into the auditorium together. The lights are on. It looks like a Sunday service is happening. We all walk in. He says, I want everybody to sit down at different places in the room. And we're like, okay, Andy, we'll sit down at different places in the room. And he asked us a few questions, which this may be enlightening for your teams. We sat down and he says, okay, when you look at the stage, what comes to mind? When you look at the stage, what comes to mind? You know what I'm writing down this stuff on my piece of paper. I'm like, it looks awesome. It doesn't look like a church that I grew up in. It's beautiful. Like I'm like, man, that's awesome. And then he asks a question. He says, what do you hope doesn't happen on that stage? Whoa, I was like, I hope the worship leader doesn't say anything dumb. Because I've done that. I hope the pastor doesn't offend my friend that I just brought to church for the first time. And I started answering these questions like I'm experiencing this through the eyes of people I may bring to church who are giving God a chance for the last time. He says, what do you wish you knew? And I was like, I want to play golf this afternoon. I wish I knew what time we were getting out of here. Like, I wish somebody would tell me when I came into church, like, what I'm going to experience. I wish somebody would tell me how many songs I'm going to sing. Because have you ever stood up in a church service and then they just keep going? And they keep going? And they keep going? And I love music, and you love music. And you're like, what? Where are they going? Where are they taking it? I just wish somebody would tell me where they're taking it. You expect that at Disney World, right? You're going to be here for a few minutes. The exits are here and here and here and here. You picture the guy from Aladdin, the genie who pops out the bottom. He's like, the exits are here, 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 and here. That's what I talk to our hosts about all the time. I'm like, just tell people where the exits are. Like, just stand up and say, hey, we're going to be here today for about an hour. We're so glad you guys are in the room with us. You know, like, let's start with common ground. And then we get to move in. So anyway, these questions change the way we saw pre-service. So now, you know, in our pre-service, you're going to find a super warm environment. It's not dark yet. It's very welcoming. It's lit well. The music's not too loud. It's not even too Christian of music sometimes. And I know that sounds sacrilegious, but we want to do everything in our power to keep people comfortable right here so that they will go with us. Element number 2 for us is the opener, which I tried to write right here, which was wrong. The opener for us is normally some sort of interactive game, some sort of song, but it's light. It's not answering any kind of questions. This spot right here is totally to just engage the audience around some common emotion or something that's happening in culture. In fact, I was going to show you something. We did this thing a few years ago called Love in 4 Chords. I don't know. It was phenomenal. You have it?
I think so.
Really? I don't think it was working. Yeah, it's not working. So it was the beginning of February. Obviously, Valentine's Day was about to happen. And we thought to ourselves, like, hey, what if we had fun around Valentine's Day? So we found this thing on the internet where these silly guys played 100 love songs in a few minutes with just using 4 chords. Which, if you're a musician, you know every worship song in history is made up of what? 4 chords, right? And so we thought, this could be awesome. This could be hilarious. And we could tap into this emotion that people are seeing in the grocery stores and in the drugstores and the thing they're spending all their money on right now and the things that they're sending their kids to school with. And so we opened up this service with 3 of our guys just talking to each other like, hey, it's about Valentine's Day. I love music. And they made fun of themselves. They made people comfortable. They sang probably 20, 30 different songs that were all joined together, mashed up together around love. And it was a crazy, crazy win. It's a win in our culture on a Sunday if in the first 3 minutes we can have people smile and or laugh. So every Sunday I'm thinking, what can I do in the first 3 minutes? Even if just the pastor's walking out cold to do welcome and there's no opener. So in this third slot in the engage is welcome, or what we call as well hosting. So even if there's no opener this week and we're like, we don't really need an opener, we're thinking really strategically in the first 3 minutes, how can we get this guy, this lady, to help people smile, engage, and connect to what we are doing. Here's the thing you need to remember about an opener. An opener never proves a point. It always creates a feeling, an emotion, okay? So an opener for us doesn't prove a point. It creates a feeling or an emotion. Element number 3, obviously hosting, welcome. This is not announcement time. This is really big for us. We do not make announcements on Sundays. Whoa. That revolutionized some of your services, wouldn't it? What if you didn't have, just by a show of hands, or you can nod because you may be near somebody who makes you do announcements, but how freeing would it be to not have to give announcements in your services? We do that now. And it has been a crazy culture shift. And we've had to cast tons of vision to our student ministries and our educational departments and all that kind of good stuff. But our job is to create an experience on Sunday that somebody actually might want to come back for. Imagine for a second that you invite people over to your house. You are a host, right? When they come to the door, what do? You welcome them. You make them feel like $1 million. Just think for a second, if you showed up to my house and I was your host, I was your welcome party, and all of a sudden you showed up to my house and you had to let yourself in because I was over here talking to my family and telling my family what to do. Would you feel very welcome or hosted? But we do this every week. We have guests that come into our home and we talk to our family. And we tell our family. I mean, just imagine if somebody walked to your door and you started giving them random things to do in your house. Hey, I'm glad you're here for dinner. So this week, you're going to sign up for the potluck. And the potluck, my neighbor just invited me. I don't know what you're talking about, potluck. But I can just feel welcomed here. So just imagine for a second that you're viewing your service and you've got skeptics and you've got saints. Right here is a really key where you do just that. You actually welcome people, host them, let them know what they're going to experience. Even if they've been here forever. You've got Aunt Gladys, who's been coming here since 1960. She needs to feel welcome too. You know what? And Aunt Gladys, the good thing is she's so connected, she's going to know where to get these announcements that you've been given. Like, she knows that she can go to Instagram. She knows that she can go to Facebook. She knows that she's going to get an email. She's going to get a lot of emails. Okay? And so we have figured out where else to do announcements. We do not do announcements here. Again, in this engaged section, we are working on helping people feel comfortable. I love that word. That would be my goal in the engage section. We're going to get to some questions here in a little bit. So I know you guys are probably like, the way you do church is dumb, and you want to tell me about it. You can tell me about it like in just a few minutes. We're going to get to involve right here. For us right here, this section is singing. So the welcome closes the engage section. And now we want to start involving people. This is where you would say something like, hey, we want you to stand up. Say hello to a few people around you. We actually want you to participate right here. The welcome signals the end to engage. And you will note that we call this section singing. Oh no, sacrilegious, right? We call it singing. We don't call it worship. This is intentional for us because remember, when we're thinking about our community and we're thinking what our church was designed to do in our community, we're thinking skeptic to saint. And all of a sudden, if I say, hey, would you stand up and worship with us? Imagine for a first-timer real quick, especially a first-timer who maybe grew up in a Catholic environment or grew up in some sort of religious background that we have no context for. And the truth is, we all know as pastors and creatives and worship leaders that singing is, like singing songs of worship is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to worship. So for us to whittle this word down to one segment of our service or even to our Christian culture it's almost a shame that that's what we've whittled it down to. So here's what we do. We call it what it is, and we let God do what he would do in that moment. So our worship leaders are very, what would you call the word? They're very careful with their terminology around what we're doing in this moment. One of the most powerful things that we watch happen in this 15-minute section of singing is we watch believers worship and connect with Jesus, and there's nothing more powerful than watching believers sing truths about their God that are true, and maybe the person standing beside them could have no idea what that even means, but there's this power. We watch non-believers and we hear stories of non-believers walking into our environment every week and just weep from hearing the song. We know how powerful it is when you combine truth with melody. There's nothing like it. In fact, we say from stage all the time, we believe the songs we sing have the ability to shape the lives we live. Like, we believe that. We just call it what it is because for anybody in our audience, the wide range of people in our audience, that's what it is. And if you've read much of the New Testament, which I've read a little bit of it, right? Nobody stood to worship. What did they do to worship in the New Testament? They fall. They fell down. So if we minimize our singing in our worship to standing in a row. I think we're just trying to shift the culture that worship is much bigger than that, and following Jesus is much bigger than standing in a row and singing worship songs. Again, that's a culture shift. You don't have to talk about that. You don't have to do that. For us, in the context of what we've been called to do in our community, that's our model. And it's a really big deal for us because we really do believe the songs we sing have the ability to shape the lives that people live, because more than any message they've ever heard, they're still singing our songs in their car on the way to work on Sunday morning. And that's a really, really powerful thing and something to steward really well. Element number 5 for us, this is baptism. This is my favorite part of service. Is this anybody else's favorite part of service? Because this is the thing where you're like, oh my gosh, it's all actually working. People are coming in here. People are connecting with Jesus. People are finding hope finally, and they're actually telling people about it. This thing's working. This is why we built the big building. This is why we do the whole funnel. This is why we challenge people to live differently and to find divine direction through God. And so baptism is my favorite thing we do. We do it uniquely, and you probably do the same thing. We require people to do a 2 to 3 minute video to where they can tell their story. Me as a pastor, I'm not telling their story. I can't do their story justice. And here's the cool thing about baptism stories for us, and what we found out is you can't argue with somebody else's story. And there have been nights, and we watch churches do this all the time. It's so powerful, where there's spontaneous baptism, and hundreds of people will come through the line and get baptized. That's amazing. And we've done that. I'm not against that. But this 2-minute video in our service has more power and more potential to move people in the direction of God than anything we do in our service. Because people listening to other people, not pastors, changes them more than anything we could ever do. So I would say, if you can make this important by not just having somebody in a tub and just dunking them, and because of, amen, walk out of the tub. If you can capitalize on this, what we used to do is this used to move it moves into vision now, but we used to do an offering there. We don't do offering in our services anymore. That's crazy too, right? We do a lot of crazy stuff. I'm sorry for that. But this used to go right into offering, and can you imagine so-and-so standing in the baptismal, and their story goes something like, a year ago, my friend Jeff invited me to church, and I didn't think God was for me, but I sat in these rows, I experienced something. My life has forever changed. And I'm thankful to Jeff today. I'm thankful for this church for being available. And then we dunk him, people are clapping, standing ovation. And then a pastor or a worship leader gets to step into a moment where he says, thank you for creating a safe space where people just like Jeff can connect with Jesus. What you're giving isn't just to turn on the lights. What you're giving towards is that. Bro, the offering bucket's like overflow. Like, you're talking about vision to get people behind. Use this as vision. Like, use baptism as vision in a way to involve people, call them to something. Again, this is on the scale where we are moving people to call them towards something. So call them towards vision at this moment, if you can. I wanted to show you desperately. Did he get it? Okay, real quick. Do we have time? So 2 weeks ago, I got to baptize a little girl. And I say little, she's 26. She has cerebral palsy. She's one of our volunteers. 3 years ago, her mom was going through a divorce, showed up at our church, and man, I get emotional thinking about it. Showed up at our church. They had never been welcomed anywhere. And now this sweet girl who had been she was really a hindrance to the people she came in contact with, all of a sudden is our best greeter at one of our doors. She accepted Jesus in the last 2 years, and we had to baptize her.
Jesus, down everyone, Jesus alone. I've been wanting down up the kids. I was listening since I was wrong. I love running people at the balcony door. It's my favorite thing to do. I want to thank my mom, stepdad, I want to thank everybody at the 11 o'clock bedtime. I want to thank all the guys in the band. Like my church, thanks for me. And I love that song, and Death was Western, man. I want to give a special shout out to Gary is the best. I want everyone to know that I love Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Y'all just stay standing, why don't you? Just stay standing and we're together. This is Haley, everybody, and I've never met, you gotta look at me real quick and stop crying, alright? I've never met anybody with so much joy. I've also never met anybody who loves Gavin as much as you. I love that, what a great dude. You sit on the front row every week and you inspire me. I show up every week hoping you're there. And I show up every week hoping a lot of people are here. Because I think what you found out to be true is what all of us are looking for. If anyone in life has had an excuse not to believe in God, it could be you. But He's real, isn't He? And He loves you. I'm so grateful today. And in just a few minutes, we're all going to get to respond to that love, and we're going to remind ourselves that we can trust God no matter what. Haley, thank you for doing this today. I'm proud of you. So why don't you grab my arm right here with both hands as you wipe your tears. There you go. Why don't you go underneath on that one right there? There you go. Hold on tight, girlfriend. All right? So listen, Haley, look at me. We're not here because of any other reason today, but because of your profession, and Jesus is your Lord. He loves you. So today it's my honor, Haley, sweet girl, to baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's why we do it, right? That's why we do it. And so remind yourselves of that and remind your people of that. Like, don't just share those stories in your staff. Figure out a way to share those stories on Sunday during your weekend experience. That moves us to our special part of the service. For us, this functions as vision most of the time, which means as soon as we get through this section, one of our pastors, it may be a worship leader, stands up and does vision around what we've either just experienced in singing, or what we would call worship, or what we've just experienced through baptism. And he's also normally pointing to a next step that will allow people to do something right here at the end of the service. It may be, go check out Starting Point. It's our environment for whatever. Go check out Next. It's on giving this week because we just talked about giving here. So in this spot, we're doing special. A special for us is not a week-to-week thing. It's normally once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks. And this special slot for us is normally a song, it's normally an interview, it's normally a video, but the video does not answer a question. So normally, like a Christian song would not be good here. Because what do all Christian songs do? They answer questions. They tell us where we can find what we're looking for, right? Thank you, Bono. And so they tell us an answer. So this right here is to build tension to help our pastor answer a question. Because remember, like, our job through here is to help make comfortable to help them want to be involved in what we're asking them to be involved in. And then through here, this is like no offense zone. Like, I'm not going to offend you with anything I say or anything I do probably here. I'm going to welcome you in here. I'm going to help you be a part of this thing. And then I'm going to let this guy or this girl do the offended. Because we know that the gospel is offensive enough, right? And so we move right into what we call title package and message. Anybody run title packages at your church? No? Yeah? Yeah. This feels like a really common thing. Now, what do you use your title packages for? May I ask? Whoever runs title packages?
It's kind of break something. It's something fun to break that wall.
Yeah.
We're just going to introduce the theme.
Cool. Introduce the theme. I mean, we really go for it.
I would say, just like what you said, build tension or
Yep.
provoke something.
Yep. Yeah, we sometimes do that as well. Mainly, we have to transition a stage. Anybody else just have to transition a stage? It's like get the band off and all the risers off. And so this for us really plays out as a minute of transition, but we want to engage people. Then we jump into the message. And our message, if you're a pastor in the room, our message starts back over here. And they funnel people right back down to a point. Because remember, the gospel is offensive enough on its own. We want to offend people here. We don't want to offend people here. So we work really hard to do that. And then we have what we would call a closer. A closer for us is sometimes a prayer. It's sometimes a song of response that helps punctuate what we heard in the message. The closer for us is not done every week, as I'm assuming it's not done for you. And what we really don't want to do here, like, we're okay with the tension of our pastor just saying, "Amen. Thank you so much for being here this week. We'll see you guys back here for part 2 of so-and-so next week," as we continue the conversation. We're more okay with that than playing a random song here just to create more emotion that has nothing to do with what we actually wanted them to do that week. And that's a big tension in the church, right? Because we feel this real need to release tension, to tie a nice little bow on the whole thing. We don't do anything here to involve people unless it helps the message. Again, our audience is very broad. If we're at a conference, Joseph Sojourner, Jeff Henderson, who I work with, they end a message and we all just jump up and sing a few songs together, that's going to be perfectly fine. But for our audience, we want them to remember this. So if this doesn't help this, we don't do this. Cool? Makes sense? The only rules to the exceptions of our rules of engagement are it's not okay to depart from the model unless you're departing on purpose. So every week we're doing this unless we make a conscious decision and tell people, this is what we're doing this week, this is where we're going. It's not okay to drift from the model by accident just because we're bored or we want to change things up. That's just what we believe. When we move outside of the model, it needs to be for good reason. We need to inform the whole team, and we need to be able to explain why. And for all you creatives, this is the last thing. There's this quick creative quandary when you look at this model, right? You're like, how do I get creative in that? Well, we know this about creatives. If you're a painter, you paint on a what? On a canvas. And your canvas is only as big as it is, right? So this is our canvas. Paint away, man. And in this 65-minute model for us, it is a challenge for me to be able to think and get creative in a 60-minute model. Andy's like, I want 40 minutes this week. And I'm like, all right, I got 25 minutes to work people to where he wants to go. Like, that's fun. It's not something that hinders me. It actually opens up the page so I can paint on the whole canvas. And so if you are creative and you're like, this has so many constraints, every creative has constraints, you're constrained to whatever you're painting on. This is just what I get to paint on, and your Sunday morning service is what you get to paint on. And here's the thing as a creative, our goal is not to be creative, right? Our goal is to leverage our creativity for the sake of our mission and vision. We love the local church, and I know you love the local church, so here's to us doing a lot more really great things to help people connect with God.
The show notes for this episode are available now at makingsundayhappen.com.
Hey guys, next week on the podcast, I'll welcome author Josiah Way to the show. Joe has written an extensive book about producing worship, which is all about the why behind why we do Sunday the way we do it. He breaks down a complete history of the modern church, and if you think that this is just going to be a history lesson, I have another thing coming for you, because yes, we'll deal with the theology behind worship in the modern church, but we're really going to break it down to what you do week to week. So it's really going to be relevant to those who make Sunday happen. So you as a church staff member or leader or volunteer, it's really going to come down to your level and kind of give you a history of the modern church and how we do worship and how we do production and creative arts the way we do it, and how we got here over the years. So we're going to kind of take a trip down memory lane and do some history with you, and then kind of come to modern time and why we do church the way we do church. So that'll be next week on the podcast. That'll be the next 2 weeks on the show. We'll have Joe join me by video. So before I leave you this week, I want to remind us of something. In Mark chapter 12, verse 30 and 31, Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was, and his answer was simple: love God. And the second is like it: love people. So you see, we can plan, we can create, we can execute a flawless worship experience every week. But if the goal for ourselves and our people is not to love God and to love people with everything that we are, I think we've missed the point. Our Christian walk and what you do on a church staff or as a volunteer should always be grounded in loving God and loving people. So it's ultimately not about the fader. It's not about pushing the right button. It's not about that perfect transition or choosing the right songs. All those things matter and are awesome in creating amazing worship experiences. But it's not the point. It's not the end all. It's not the goal. The goal is life change. The goal is to see life change in others. It's to see people come to know Christ, and it's to see believers being strengthened in their faith. So it's all about pointing people to God, to love God, and it's all about loving the people. That's why I talk all the time that even if you're in production or guest services or worship or wherever you are with your volunteers, the number one job that you have as a church staff member, if you're on staff at a church, is to pastor your people well. That is the number one job that you have, is to be a pastor to your team. Yes, the fader can be moved correctly, the light cue can be hit perfectly, but if we're not loving God in our personal walk and teaching other people to love God and pointing other people to God, and if we're not loving people, then it's all for naught. It doesn't matter if those aren't the things that we're going after. So that's why I named our ministry years ago 1230 Media. It comes from Mark 1230. It's a reminder to us internally as a 1230 Media team, as a ministry, that we can have the best media content on the planet. We can help you create amazing worship experiences. But if we miss the point that it's about life change, then it's all pointless. So that's why I named our ministry 1230 Media. It comes from Mark 1230. So it's a reminder to us internally that it's about people, and it's a reminder to you as you serve and transform your own worship experiences week in, week out, that it's about loving God and loving people. And ultimately, it's about loving God, because if you love God, then loving people is a natural flow of what you're going to do if you love God. So take care of yourself spiritually, and I'm preaching to myself here. Make sure that you're spending time with God regularly and growing with Him, and then make sure that you're loving people. If you put those two things at the forefront of your ministry, and I don't get this right every time, guys, no way. So I'm totally preaching to myself here, but just a reminder that the ultimate goal as a believer is to love God and love people. And that definitely applies to us week in, week out as we are planning, creating, and executing our worship experiences. So just a reminder, this week, Mark 12:30, love God, love people. All right, be sure to continue the conversation with us on Facebook, if you would, in our Making Sunday Happen Facebook group. Just search Making Sunday Happen on Facebook to ask to join the group. My buddy Steve Dirks kind of leads that charge over there. So he's really, really good about once you ask to join the group, he'll accept you right away and you're right in. So we try to, again, I say this often, we try to keep that group pretty exclusive to those who plan and execute worship experiences. So we try not to make it too huge where you're just a number or one person in a sea of thousands. But we try to kind of keep that pretty closed off to people that we know are planning and executing worship experiences, those who make Sunday happen. So if you're a part of your guest services team, communications team, worship, production, anything like that plans, executes, creates worship experiences on Sundays or the weekend, this is the group for you. So jump in there, join the conversation, Making Sunday Happen on Facebook. Well, thank you guys so much for listening and watching this week. Go out there and create some amazing worship experiences this weekend. I'll catch you next week.
Making Sunday Happen is a production of the ministry of 1230 Media. For show notes, archive episodes, and more free resources for your church, visit MakingSundayHappen.com.